I'm Sophia Bennett, 33, founder of a tech empire my family never saw coming. They called my dreams a hobby, praising my brother Jason's medical triumphs instead. Tonight, at his engagement dinner, his fiancée gasped, "You're the CEO of NextTech?" Their faces froze as the truth hit. I'm Sophia Bennett. I'm 33 years old, and for the past 5 years I've been quietly building a tech company while my family thought I was simply drifting, wasting my potential, chasing something unserious. They never quite said it outright, but every glance, every comment, every silence made it clear. They didn't see me. Not really. Tonight changed everything. At my brother's engagement dinner, in a room filled with crystal glasses, white roses, and years of unspoken judgment, his fiancée looked at me with wide eyes and said, "Wait, you're the founder of NextTech?" Her company had acquired our app for millions. That moment was worth every holiday dinner where my parents pitted me against my older brother Jason. Their faces frozen. Like the image itself couldn't compute. My brother's jaw is still on the floor. If you're listening to this and your dreams have ever been dismissed, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, because you're not alone. I grew up in Highland Park, Illinois, a pristine suburb just north of Chicago. It looked like a dream on the outside, but inside, it was a shrine to perfection. My father, Richard Mitchell, wasn't just a surgeon. He was the surgeon the one other surgeons called when the case got too hard. My mother, Diana, a corporate attorney who never lost in court, not once. And then there was Jason. 4 years older, perfect, brilliant. The golden boy who glided into med school as if the world had been carved out just for him. At our house, dinner wasn't for bonding, it was for reporting accomplishments. "What did everyone achieve today?" Mom would ask before lifting her fork. Jason, always something. A science fair win, shadowing a top doctor, interning at the best hospital. When it was my turn, I'd say something like, "I built a website this weekend." I remember being 15, glowing with pride after teaching myself HTML and CSS. Mom looked at me with a polite smile that stopped just short of warmth. "That's nice, honey," she said. "But shouldn't you focus on your debate prep? College is like commitment, not hobbies." Dad nodded, then turned to ask Jason about his AP biology project. Message received. Computers were toys. Real success lived in courtrooms and operating rooms. My bedroom became my sanctuary. While Jason's walls held trophies and framed awards, mine held printouts of code, app sketches, and lines of JavaScript. I taught myself Python at night while fighting to stay awake in chemistry class the next morning. My parents only noticed if it impacted my GPA. At 16, I built a program that streamlined planning for our school's massive annual fundraiser. The event coordinator was floored it cut planning time in half. She told my parents at a school event, "Your daughter has an incredible gift." My mother smiled thinly and said, "Oh, Olivia dabbles in many things, but we're focused on her law school prerequisites." I had never said I wanted law school. Not once. But they had written that script for me long ago. Junior year, everything shifted. I entered a regional coding competition with an inventory management system I'd built from scratch. I worked on it for months. But the finals landed on the same day as Jason's med school acceptance party. "We're so sorry, sweetie," Mum said, "but your brother worked his whole life for this, you understand, right?" I went anyway. Alone. The only finalist without family in the crowd. And I won. First place. The judges were software engineers. They told me I had real talent. I came home with my trophy, heart pounding, expecting something. Instead, I walked into a house packed with people celebrating Jason. My father glanced at the award. "That's wonderful, dear," he said, and turned back to toasting my brother. That night I decided I would build something so undeniable they couldn't dismiss it. I wouldn't ask for permission anymore. Or their approval. Senior year meant college applications and pressure. They pushed hard for Ivy League schools with top pre-law programs. I chose state schools with strong computer science departments. When my acceptance to Illinois Tech came in plus a generous scholarship, you'd think I'd join the circus. "You're throwing away your future," Dad said. Mom asked, "Why not Yale? Why computer science? That field isn't right for someone like you." What they meant was, it wasn't right for a Mitchell. Jason tried to help in his usual tone. Maybe it's a phase. Let her try it out, get it out of her system. I left for college that fall carrying two things, their disappointment and my determination. For the first time, I could breathe. Illinois Tech was freedom. I wasn't the girl wasting her potential on computer games. I was Olivia One professors praised for her innovation. I met Emma Rodriguez in an advanced programming class. We clicked instantly. While others struggled with the final project, we finished it early and added extra features just for fun. We'd stay up late in the campus cafe, dreaming. One night, Emma showed me an article about her mum's lupus misdiagnosis. Doctors can perform miracles, she said, but they don't talk to each other or their patients. That lit a fire. We sketched ideas on napkins, whiteboards. Our vision? A platform that would fix how medical information moved between providers and patients. By semester's end, we had the skeleton of what would become NextTech. Summer meant going back home, where nothing changed. At family parties, relatives asked Jason about his residency. They asked me when I'd pick a real major. I kept my answers vague. Oh, I'm studying technology, I'd say. My uncle once told me, well, I'm sure there's always it support, you'll land somewhere. What they didn't know, Emma and I were building our prototype in her parents' garage. Her family brought us sandwiches, asked us about our goals, supported us. The contrast to my own family was stark. Junior year, we had a working beta. We entered competitions, won enough to file patents, incorporated the company. One professor connected us with Dr. Harriet Chin, a hospital administrator frustrated with the broken healthcare system. She became our advisor, and then our first paying client. This, she said after seeing our demo, could change everything. When can we start a pilot? That Thanksgiving, my dad pulled me aside. Your mum and I are worried. Jason can help you get an admin job at the hospital. Something stable. I took a deep breath. Actually, I'm launching a startup. He laughed, not meanly, just dismissively. Be serious, Olivia. You need experience before chasing fantasies. That was the last time I opened up to them. It was too painful to see my dreams treated like childish games. Emma and I graduated and moved into a tiny apartment in Chicago's South Loop. We lived off coffee and ramen, took side gigs, building websites to pay rent. Our first office was a desk in a shared co-working space. Slowly, NextTech took off. An angel investor helped us hire our first employee genius named Tyler. We landed a contract with a regional medical center, then another. A network of outpatient clinics followed. At home, I kept things vague. Work is good, I'd say. They assumed I was doing basic tech support. I didn't correct them, not because I was hiding, but because I'd stopped expecting them to listen. That Christmas, Jason announced his engagement. We threw a party tonight to celebrate. That's when everything changed. His fiancée, a pharmaceutical sales rep, caught me as I was refilling my drink. "You're Sophia Bennett?" she asked. "Of NextTech?" Her company had just completed the acquisition. Multi-million-dollar deal. She was stunned. "You're the founder?" she whispered. My parents heard, my brother heard, everyone heard. For a moment the entire room froze. Then it hit them. I didn't need their permission. Or their plan. I had built something real, something powerful, something that mattered. So if you're out there right now, building in silence, dreaming in secret, feeling like no one sees you, keep going. You are not invisible. You are just getting started. My parents beamed with pride as relatives swirled around us, asking about wedding plans I hadn't made. Later that evening, I found myself alone in the kitchen, trying to breathe, when my mother entered quietly. "You know, Olivia," she said, casually refilling her wine glass, "Jason's friend Mark is single now. He's finishing his neurology residency. I could arrange an introduction." The words were simple, but the meaning underneath stung. If I couldn't achieve success, maybe I could at least marry it. What they didn't see, what they refused to see, was the company I was building. The platform we had launched was transforming patient care. Our user base was multiplying by the week. Hospitals were reporting fewer medical errors. Patient satisfaction scores were climbing. And medical journals? They were starting to take notice. "We need to talk about scaling," Emma said one morning, her voice firm, her eyes scanning a desk scattered with invitations from investors. "We can't keep up with demand." By the time I turned 26, NextTech had 30 employees. We had raised $5 million in venture capital. I had moved into a modest, sun-filled apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. For the first time in my adult life, I could afford to pay off my student loans. Still, when I visited my parents, I drove my old college car. I dressed simply. I let them believe their version of the story that I was still struggling, still searching. But it wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about protecting something sacred. Something they had never truly valued. I wanted success, yes, but not to win anyone's approval. I wanted it on my terms. The divide between who I was becoming and who my family believed me to be grew wider with each passing year. In one world, I was a rising tech founder. Industry insiders were starting to whisper my name. In the other, I was the daughter who had failed to live up to expectations. The dissonance was deafening. Then came the email from Memorial Health System. I read it 3 times before I called Emma into my office. My voice shook. "They want to implement Next across their entire network," I whispered. 27 hospitals, 3 states. Emma collapsed into the chair across from me. "That's the biggest healthcare provider in the Midwest," I said, barely believing it. We had been working toward this moment for years, but the reality of it left me breathless. Within hours, we were getting calls from other systems, hospitals that wanted in. Then came the acquisition offer. $30 million, a sleek conference room. Polished executives, double our age, offering us jobs if we gave up everything we had built. "It's a generous offer," Emma said as we left the meeting. I nodded. "It is, and we're turning it down. We weren't in this for the exit. NextTech meant more than money. It was a vision, a mission." 2 weeks later, Sierra Partners offered $30 million for a minority stake. That we accepted. Our valuation crossed $100 million. The press release went out. But I requested that only my first name be used, Olivia, co-founder and CEO. Industry articles featured Emma's photo. Mine was a silhouette. It wasn't about hiding. Not exactly. It was about controlling the story. "Don't you want the recognition?" Emma asked, after a conference where I deliberately stayed out of the spotlight. "You've earned it." "I do," I said softly. "Just not yet, and not from strangers." What I couldn't admit, not even to her, was the fear, the complexity of my need to be seen. I wanted my family to recognize me, but not claim me, not twist my success into a reflection of their support. I needed this to be mine, fully mine. There was something powerful about building in silence. In tech circles, I was becoming known as the ghost founder, the reclusive mind behind the breakthrough, the mystery added to my legend. TechWorld magazine called us visionaries. They asked for photos of both founders. I negotiated. Emma, clearly. Me, just a shot from behind gazing out over our office. It was perfect. At 28, I was a multi-millionaire in paper. I bought a condo in downtown Chicago. Sleek, minimal, quiet. When relatives asked, I told them I lived in a small place with roommates. Let them believe what they wanted. My inner circle was small. Emma. My assistant Kayla, who knew the drill of declining every family invitation, and Dr. Winters, me therapist. She helped me untangle the storm inside. "What are you waiting for?" she asked one day. "What makes it the right time to tell them?" I thought hard. I want it to be so undeniable they can't explain it away, so big they can't take credit or call it luck, and I want to be at peace if they never approve. I need to be okay either way. She nodded. "And are you working toward that peace?" "Every day," I said. And I was. NextTech wasn't just a company, it was my self-definition, my rebellion, my salvation. Ironically, my brother had followed my father into medicine, but I was the one changing healthcare. Next was now in over 200 facilities. Communication errors down by 43%. Patient satisfaction up 38%. Sometimes, after family dinners where I felt small again, I'd pull up the stats. not out of ego, but to remind myself of truth, to ground myself. Then came the rumours. Horizon Health Technologies, the giant, was sniffing around. "They're talking 200 million, Emma said, after a quiet lunch with their director. 200 million. That kind of number doesn't get dismissed. That kind of number forces recognition. For the first time, I wondered if I was ready to be seen. Really seen. But the thought scared me. What happens when both worlds collide? Then life took the decision out of my hands. It was a Sunday. I was reviewing projections when the phone rang. My mother. "Olivia, wonderful news," she chirped. "Jason and Sophia set a date. Labor Day weekend, the engagement dinner's next month. At Bluebird." My heart skipped. Bluebird, the most exclusive restaurant in Chicago. "You'll need to clear your calendar," she added. "Of course," I said. I meant it. I was genuinely happy for my brother, complicated as our bond was. "Oh, hand Olivia," her tone shifted, critical. "It's a very upscale event. Perhaps we should shop for something appropriate. Your wardrobe was still very collegiate at Christmas." I glanced down. Designer silk blouse, tailored trousers. My outfit cost more than her monthly mortgage. "I'll find something," I said. "Don't worry." "Well, if you're sure, Sophia works for a big tech company. Very impressive. Everyone will be dressed to impress." I took a slow breath. "What company?" "Oh, something about health systems. Horizon something." My body went cold. Horizon Health Technologies. The company negotiating to buy my company. "What's Sophia's last name?" I asked as calmly as I could. "Winters," she said. "Sophia Winters. Why do you ask?" The name wasn't familiar, but Horizon was massive. Thousands of employees. And suddenly, the two worlds I had tried so hard to keep apart, they were about to collide, whether I was ready or not. My parents beamed with pride as relatives swirled around us, asking about wedding plans I hadn't made. Later that evening, I found myself alone in the kitchen, trying to breathe, when my mother entered quietly. "You know, Olivia," she said, casually refilling her wine glass, "Jason's friend Mark is single now. He's finishing his neurology residency. I could arrange an introduction." The words were simple, but the meaning underneath stung. If I couldn't achieve success, maybe I could at least marry it. What they didn't see, what they refused to see, was the company I was building. The platform we had launched was transforming patient care. Our user base was multiplying by the week. Hospitals were reporting fewer medical errors. Patient satisfaction scores were climbing. And medical journals? They were starting to take notice. "We need to talk about scaling," Emma said one morning, her voice firm, her eyes scanning a desk scattered with invitations from investors. "We can't keep up with demand." By the time I turned 26, NextTech had 30 employees. We had raised $5 million in venture capital. I had moved into a modest, sun-filled apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. For the first time in my adult life, I could afford to pay off my student loans. Still, when I visited my parents, I drove my old college car. I dressed simply. I let them believe their version of the story that I was still struggling, still searching. But it wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about protecting something sacred, something they had never truly valued. I wanted success, yes, but not to win anyone's approval. I wanted it on my terms. The divide between who I was becoming and who my family believed me to be grew wider with each passing year. In one world, I was a rising tech founder. Industry insiders were starting to whisper my name. In the other, I was the daughter who had failed to live up to expectations. The dissonance was deafening. Then came the email from Memorial Health System. I read it 3 times before I called Emma into my office. My voice shook. "They want to implement Nex across their entire network," I whispered. 27 hospitals. 3 states. Emma collapsed into the chair across from me. "That's the biggest healthcare provider in the Midwest," I said, barely believing it. We had been working toward this moment for years, but the reality of it left me breathless. Within hours, we were getting calls from other systems, hospitals that wanted in. Then came the acquisition offer, $30 million, a sleek conference room. Polished executives, double our age, offering us jobs if we gave up everything we had built. "It's a generous offer," Emma said as we left the meeting. I nodded. It is, and we're turning it down. We weren't in this for the exit. NextTech meant more than money. It was a vision, a mission. 2 weeks later, Sierra Partners offered $30 million for a minority stake. That we accepted. Our valuation crossed $100 million. The press release went out. But I requested that only my first name be used. Olivia, co-founder and CEO. Industry articles featured Emma's photo. Mine was a silhouette. It wasn't about hiding. Not exactly. It was about controlling the story. Don't you want the recognition? Emma asked after a conference where I deliberately stayed out of the spotlight. You've earned it. I do, I said softly. Just not yet, and not from strangers. What I couldn't admit, not even to her, was the fear, the complexity of my need to be seen. I wanted my family to recognize me but not claim me, not twist my success into a reflection of their support. I needed this to be mine, fully mine. There was something powerful about building in silence. In tech circles, I was becoming known as the ghost founder, the reclusive mind behind the breakthrough, the mystery added to my legend. Tech World magazine called us visionaries. They asked for photos of both founders. I negotiated. Emma, clearly. Me? Just a shot from behind her gazing out over our office. It was perfect. At 28, I was a multi-millionairean paper. I bought a condo in downtown Chicago. Sleek, minimal, quiet. When relatives asked, I told them I lived in a small place with roommates, let them believe what they wanted. My inner circle was small. Emma, my assistant Kayla, who knew the drill of declining every family invitation, and Dr. Winters, me therapist. She helped me untangle the storm inside. What are you waiting for? She asked one day. What makes it the right time to tell them? I thought hard. I want it to be so undeniable they can't explain it away. So big they can't take credit or call it luck. And I want to be at peace if they never approve. I need to be okay either way. She nodded. And are you working toward that peace? Every day, I said. And I was. NextTech wasn't just a company. It was my self-definition, my rebellion, my salvation. Ironically, my brother had followed my father into medicine. But I was the one changing healthcare. Next was now in over 200 facilities. Communication errors down by 43%. Patient satisfaction up 38%. Sometimes, after family dinners where I felt small again, I'd pull up the stats, not out of ego, but to remind myself of truth, to ground myself. Then came the rumours. Horizon Health Technologies, the giant, was sniffing around. They're talking 200 million, Emma said after a quiet lunch with their director. 200 million. That kind of number doesn't get dismissed. That kind of number forces recognition. For the first time, I wondered if I was ready to be seen, really seen. But the thought scared me. What happens when both worlds collide? Then life took the decision out of my hands. It was a Sunday. I was reviewing projections when the phone rang. My mother. Olivia, wonderful news, she chirped. Jason and Sophia set a date. Labor Day weekend. The engagement dinner's next month. At Bluebird. My heart skipped. Bluebird. The most exclusive restaurant in Chicago. You'll need to clear your calendar, she added. Of course, I said. I meant it. I was genuinely happy for my brother, complicated as our bond was. Oh, hand Olivia. Her tone shifted, critical. It's a very upscale event. Perhaps we should shop for something appropriate. Your wardrobe was still very collegiate at Christmas. I glanced down. Designer silk blouse, tailored trousers. My outfit cost more than her monthly mortgage. I'll find something, I said. Don't worry. Well, if you're sure. Sophia works for a big tech company. Very impressive. Everyone will be dressed to impress. I took a slow breath. What company? Oh, something about health systems. Horizon something. My body went cold. Horizon Health Technologies. The company negotiating to buy my company. What's Sophia's last name? I asked as calmly as I could. Winters, she said. Sophia Winters. Why do you ask? The name wasn't familiar, but Horizon was massive. Thousands of employees. And suddenly, the two worlds I had tried so hard to keep apart, they were about to collide. whether I was ready or not. Still, the connection was unsettling. After I hung up, I called Emma right away. "You're not going to believe this," I told her, barely able to get the words out. "My brother is engaged to someone from Horizon." There was a pause. Then Emma said carefully, "That's quite a coincidence. Do you think it could complicate the acquisition?" I didn't know, but I knew I needed to find out exactly who she was before that dinner. One quick search on LinkedIn gave me everything I needed. Her name was Sophia Winters, Director of Strategic Acquisitions at Horizon. Not only was she involved in the deal, she would be leading it. And in just a few weeks, I'd be sitting across from her at my brother's engagement dinner. Pretending to be nothing more than a slightly underemployed tech support worker, the universe really had a twisted sense of humour. As the dinner approached, the pressure from my family ramped up. My mom called twice to remind me about my outfit. My dad left a voicemail, encouraging me to bring up something impressive about my career when speaking to Sophia's parents, who were apparently very accomplished. But the worst came a week before the dinner. "Olivia, I need to talk to you about something delicate," my mother began, and I instantly recognized her lawyer voice. That tone was never a good sign. "Your father and I had dinner with the Winters last night. They asked about you. And, well, Jason mentioned you were between jobs." My stomach tightened. "I'm not between jobs, Mom." "Well," she said, "that little help desk thing wasn't really something to highlight. Jason was just trying to smooth things over. The point is, Sophia's father knows someone at Apple. They're hiring entry-level IT staff. Isn't that wonderful? We could finally get you on a proper career track." It wasn't just the casual dismissal of my work that hurt. It was the assumption that I needed saving. That after 5 years of sacrifice, late nights, breakthroughs and breakdowns, no one had ever bothered to ask what I'd been building. I forced myself to stay calm. "Mum, I appreciate the thought, but I'm satisfied with my current position." My voice was tight, controlled, full of everything I wasn't saying. "Don't be proud, Olivia," she replied. "This is a real opportunity. We all have to start somewhere." After I hung up, I called Rachel, my childhood best friend. The one person who never doubted me, even when she didn't fully understand what I did. She'd recently moved back to Chicago, and over the years, she'd become one of the few people who actually knew the truth about NextTech. "They set you up for a pity interview," she said, outraged on my behalf, "while you're in the middle of a $200 million acquisition." She laughed. "That's rich, even for your parents." "The worst part," I said, unable to keep the humour out of my voice, "the woman my brother is marrying is literally the person negotiating to buy my company. And your family has no idea?" "None." "So what are you going to do at the dinner?" she asked. "Show up in jeans and a hoodie like they expect, or go full CEO mode and watch their jaws drop?" I thought about it, carefully, seriously. "Neither," I said at last. "I'm just going to be myself. No pretense. No big reveal. No games. Just dignity." Rachel gave me a look. "That's very mature of you." I smiled faintly. 5 years of therapy will do that. I'm done trying to prove anything to them. If they find out, they find out. But I'm not hiding anymore, and I'm not performing either. The night before the dinner, Horizon's final acquisition offer came in. $215 million. With conditions that would keep Emma and me at the company for at least 3 years after the sale. We were officially on the edge of becoming centimillionaires. That evening, I pulled out a simple but elegant black dress. Something classic, confident, calm. Whatever happened the next night, I knew my worth. And no one, even my family, could take that from me. Bluebird Restaurant lived up to the hype. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in warm light. Blue velvet banquettes lined the walls. Silver glinted from meticulously set tables. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the Chicago River, its dark waters catching the shimmer of city lights. I arrived exactly on time. Not early enough to help, like my mother had suggested, but not late enough to draw attention. Just punctual. Professional. The hostess led me to a private room where my family had already gathered. My father was by the bar, laughing with an older man I guessed was Mr. Winters. My mother hovered over place cards at the table, clearly optimizing them for social strategy. Jason spotted me first. "Liv, you made it." He crossed the room to hug me with that same easy confidence he'd always had, the kind that came from never being questioned. "Come meet Sophia," he said, guiding me toward the windows. She stood tall, poised, dressed in deep burgundy, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo. I recognized her immediately from Horizon's executive page. We'd never met in person before. Negotiations had been handled by intermediaries until now. "Sophia, this is my sister, Olivia," Jason said, that faintly apologetic tone creeping into his voice. The same tone he always used when introducing me to someone. Impressive. "It's so nice to finally meet you," Sophia said warmly, extending her hand. "Jason talks about you all the time," I smiled and shook her hand. "Congratulations on your engagement. I'm happy for you both." Just then, my mother materialized beside me. "Olivia, I see you found something to wear. That's nice." There was a pause. "We've put you next to Cousin Margaret. You two always got along." Translation: far from the important guests, dinner began with champagne and toasts. My father raised his glass first. "To my son, who has made us proud every day of his life, and to Sophia, a brilliant, accomplished woman worthy of him." His voice cracked a little with emotion. We couldn't ask for a better addition to our family. My mother followed with a carefully prepared speech highlighting Jason's rise from elementary school science fairs to chief resident. She ended with, "And now he's found a partner equally committed to excellence, to Jason and Sophia." As the glasses clinked, I noticed Sophia watching me more intently, like she was trying to place me. The first course arrived, and conversation flowed around me. Cousin Margaret turned to me with a polite smile. "So, Olivia, what are you doing now?" she asked, like I'd just revealed I had 6 months to live. "Health technology," I replied. "Database management." Technically true, just dramatically understated. "Oh," she said, "that's nice. Is there room for growth in that kind of thing?" Before I could respond, my uncle chimed in. "Jason says you might have a leader apple. That'd be quite a step up, huh?" I took a slow sip of water. I'm actually very satisfied with my current work. My father overheard and joined in. "There's no shame in accepting help, Olivia. We all want to see you succeed." And then, from across the table, Sophia leaned in. "Olivia," she said during a lull. Her voice was quiet. "Clear. Forgive me, but is your last name Mitchell?" The room fell silent. Jason looked confused. "Of course it is," he said. "She's my sister." Sophia's eyes widened. "You're Sophia Bennett? From NextTech?" And there it was. The moment I dreaded and, secretly, anticipated. I met her gaze. "Yes!" Sophia set down her fork. "Wait, you're the founder? The co?" She stopped herself, suddenly remembering we weren't alone. Jason laughed nervously. "Sophia, I think you're confusing Olivia with someone else. My sister works in tech support or something." "No," Sophia said slowly, locking eyes with me. "Your sister is the founder and CEO of NextTech, the healthcare platform that's revolutionizing patient care across the country. The company my firm is about to acquire for over $200 million. Silence, complete and absolute." My father froze mid-sip. My mother's hand flew to her pearls. Jason's mouth hung open. "Is this true?" my father finally asked. I nodded. "Emma Rodriguez and I founded NextTech 6 years ago. We currently employ more than 70 people and serve over 300 healthcare facilities nationwide." My mother blinked. "But why wouldn't you tell us?" Before I could respond, Sophia spoke. And this time, her tone wasn't just professional. It was admiring, enthusiastic, amazed. "Your platform reduced medication errors at Boston General by an astonishing 62% in just the first year. The design of your interface completely transformed how doctors access and manage patient information. For years, we've struggled to create anything close to this, but your solution is leagues ahead, truly light years beyond. That's why we're prepared to pay a premium to bring you on board. At the dinner table, my family looked at me as if they were meeting a stranger. And in many ways they were. $200 million. My father's voice was barely above a whisper as he spoke. Sophia gave a subtle nod. The acquisition is scheduled to close next week, pending final approvals. Then she turned toward me, wearing a slightly embarrassed smile. I didn't realize you were Jason's sister. Your company profile only showed Olivia, no photo, and our teams had been handling all negotiations. I said I preferred to keep a low profile, an understatement if there ever was one. The rest of the evening blurred into a mixture of shocked questions and awkward revelations. Relatives who had insulted me just an hour earlier were now seeking my advice on investments. My mother mentioned not once but 3 times that she always knew I had a special talent with computers. My father claimed he had been telling colleagues about his daughter, the tech entrepreneur, for years. Jason was mostly quiet, silently absorbing the fact that his struggling little sister was about to sell her company for an amount far exceeding what he could ever hope to earn in a lifetime as a physician. Throughout it all, I kept my composure, answering politely without the desperate need for their approval that had haunted so much of my earlier life. The validation I once craved felt hollow now, overshadowed by their sudden, opportunistic pride. As the evening wound down, Sophia pulled me aside. "I'm sorry if I made things awkward," she said softly. "I was just so surprised. I smiled genuinely. Don't apologize. This has been a long time coming. For what it's worth," she added, "your reputation in the industry is extraordinary. People call you the ghost genius. Now I understand why you kept such a low profile." As we said our goodbyes, my mother clutched my arm. "We need to talk soon, Olivia. Properly talk. About everything." I nodded, knowing the conversation was unavoidable, but no longer fearing it. "We will." Walking to my car, I felt lighter somehow. The secret I'd carried for years was finally out in the open. Before I even got home, my phone buzzed. My mother, "We need to talk. Brunch tomorrow. The Drake Hotel at 11. By morning, messages flooded in. Relatives suddenly remembered they had always supported my computer interests. Cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years asked about investment opportunities. Jason sent 3 messages, each more confused than the last, ending with a simple, "Why didn't you tell me?" I only replied to my parents agreeing to brunch. Some conversations were better face to face. The Drake's dining room was elegant and discreet, perfect for what lay ahead. My parents were already seated, both impeccably dressed, as if for a serious business meeting rather than a family brunch. Olivia, my father stood awkwardly, shifting between his usual formal greeting and something more fitting for a daughter he'd just discovered, was wildly successful. He settled on an uncomfortable hug. "You look well." My mother was less reserved. "Darling, we have so much to discuss. I've been reading all about NextTech this morning, the innovation awards, the funding rounds, user growth. Why would you keep all this from us? We're your family." I took a deep breath. "I think you know why." "I certainly don't," my father replied defensively. "We've always supported your pursuits." The waiter brought coffee, giving me a moment to gather myself. Once he left, I looked directly at them. "You never took my interest in technology seriously. Every time I tried to share my work, it was dismissed as a hobby phase I'd get over before finding a real career. After a while, it was easier to stop trying." "That's not fair," my mother protested. "We just wanted what was best for you. The tech field seemed so uncertain. What you wanted was for me to follow a path you understood and approved of." I corrected gently. "When I chose differently, you treated it as failure." My father leaned forward. "We always knew you had potential, Olivia. We were pushing you to excel." "No," I said firmly. "You were pushing me to conform. There's a difference." "Well, clearly it worked out," he countered. "Look at what you've accomplished." "Maybe our pushing motivated you." Exactly the response I feared, taking credit for a success they had no part in, rewriting history to cast themselves as supportive mentors rather than dismissive critics. "Dad, do you remember telling me to get a real job 5 years ago at Thanksgiving, or suggesting I take an administrative position at Jason's hospital because my work wasn't viable?" "Mom, do you remember arranging a pity job interview for me just last week?" My mother looked embarrassed. "We were concerned about you. You never shared any details about your work. How were we supposed to know? You could have asked. Really? Asked with genuine interest, not just waiting for an answer that confirmed what you already believed about me. The conversation continued through eggs, Benedict, and mimosas painful, but necessary. My mother vacillated between defensiveness and attempts at reconciliation. My father, true to form, tried to maintain authority by suggesting he'd always seen my hidden potential. Your brother always spoke highly of your intelligence, my mother added, as if Jason's approval legitimized me retroactively. I said, finally, I know you both love me, but love without respect or understanding isn't enough. I needed you to see me for who I really was, not who he wanted me to be. We parted with tentative plans for dinner the following week, first step toward whatever our relationship might become. It wasn't the catharsis of a movie scene, but real healing rarely is. That evening, Jason showed up at my apartment, unannounced. I brought wine, he said awkwardly, holding up an expensive bottle of Cabernet. Figured we might need it. I let him in, surprised by the initiative. My sleek penthouse, with floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist design, was far from the struggling life he'd imagined for me. Nice place, he said, looking around. Really nice. Thanks. We settled in my living room, glasses of wine in hand, the Chicago skyline glittering beyond the windows. Then he began, I've been an ass. The blunt admission made me laugh, not entirely. No, I bought into this whole story about you struggling or being lost. I never really asked you about your work, like actually asked. No, you didn't, I replied. He swirled his wine thoughtfully. I think I liked being the successful one, the one who made Mom and Dad proud. It was comfortable. His honesty disarmed me. I'd expected excuses or revisionist history like our parents. For what it's worth, he said, I'm sorry, and I'm really impressed by what you've built. Sophia hasn't stopped talking about your platform. Apparently, you're some kind of genius. I just built something I believed in, I said, something that actually helps people. Like what I try to do as a doctor, he nodded, just on a much larger scale. We talked for hours, really talked, maybe for the first time as adults. He asked genuine questions about NextTech and the challenges of building a company from scratch. I asked about his medical work and found myself truly interested when he wasn't trying to prove superiority. As he left, he paused at the door. Sophia really likes you. She was mortified about adding you at dinner, but she's hoping you two might become friends especially since you'll be working together after the acquisition. I'd like that, I said, surprised. I meant it. In the weeks before the acquisition closed, my family relationships entered new, unfamiliar territory. My parents oscillated between genuine efforts to understand my work and reflexive behaviours shaped by decades of seeing me through a particular lens. There were uncomfortable lunches where my father gave unsolicited business advice and awkward phone calls where my mother worried if I was eating properly despite my busy CEO schedule. But there were also moments of real connection. My father asked to see NextTech's platform and listened attentively as I explained its features. My mother admitted she'd never really understood technology but was proud of what I'd created. Small steps, but meaningful ones. The most unexpected development was Sophia's role in bridging the gap between my worlds. As both my future sister-in-law and professional colleague, she offered a rare and insightful perspective on the complexities within the Mitchell family. One afternoon, over coffee, she gently said, "Your parents are trying." It was a simple statement, but it carried so much weight. "They just don't have the vocabulary for this version of success," she explained. "They're learning a new language." I looked at her and said, "A language you seem to speak fluently." She smiled, a quiet acknowledgement of the bridge she was building between two worlds. I grew up in a household where worth was measured by academic degrees and professional titles. For years, I believed that was the only way to define success. But life taught me differently. There are many paths to a meaningful life, and maybe, just maybe, I could help translate that for my family. She did exactly that, patiently educating my parents about the tech industry, framing my accomplishments in terms they could understand, and gently bringing them back to reality when old assumptions crept in. Her efforts were not always met with immediate success, but they softened the edges of transition, making the new reality a bit easier to accept. When the acquisition closed on schedule, Emma and I became centallionaires overnight. Our names appeared together in the press release, accompanied by professional photos. For the first time, I was publicly recognized as the co-founder of NextTech, the ghost genius stepping into the light. 6 months after my brother's engagement dinner, life had settled into a new rhythm. Another tech acquisition had gone through smoothly. I was now leading the innovation division at Horizon Health Technologies, with our platform rolling out across hospitals on 3 continents. Emma managed international expansion. From my office overlooking the Chicago River, where the spring sunshine shimmered on the water, I ended a conference call with our development team in Singapore. My focus was interrupted by a text from Sophia. "Reminder dinner at your place tonight. I'm bringing that wine you liked. Jason says he's making dessert, so expect emergency cupcakes from the bakery when he inevitably burns something." I smiled at the thought. These casual family dinners had become a cherished monthly tradition, something unimaginable just a year ago. Sometimes my parents joined us, other times it was just the 3 of us. But the easy camaraderie that grew between Sophia, Jason, and me was precious. Working alongside Sophia deepened our friendship. Her straightforward business style matched mine, and her understanding of my family's dynamics was invaluable. She saw beneath their controlling behaviours to the insecurities driving them. "Your dad didn't dismiss your tech career because he thought you'd fail," she once told me. "He dismissed it because he didn't understand it." And Richard Mitchell hates not understanding things. That insight reshaped how I saw those early struggles. My relationship with Jason had transformed the most. Without the old hierarchy of successful doctor and struggling sister, we found common ground. Both driven, detail-oriented perfectionists committed to improving healthcare. Now we exchanged ideas instead of judgments. My parents truly were trying. That was the most accurate way to describe it. We established new boundaries, my mother no longer offering unsolicited advice on my appearance, my father making visible efforts to ask about my work without immediately suggesting changes. Our weekly Sunday calls became genuine conversations, sometimes difficult, but real. My mother even visited NextTech's offices, her initial awkwardness melting into genuine pride as employees greeted me with respect. The healing was internal too. The acquisition gave me the freedom to focus on my well-being in ways I had neglected during the startup grind. Therapy with Dr. Winters helped me untangle complicated feelings about my family's sudden recognition. "You spent years protecting yourself from their judgment," she observed one session. "Now that protection isn't necessary in the same way, but the habits remain. It's okay to let some walls down, gradually." How? I took her advice not just with family, but in building a broader support network. Rachel remained my oldest and most trusted friend, but I also connected with other women entrepreneurs through mentoring programs and industry events. The isolation that once marked my early career gave way to a chosen family people who understood both my work and my journey. One of my greatest joys became mentoring young women interested in technology. Once a month, I hosted workshops for high school girls, sharing not only technical skills, but the emotional resilience needed to pursue unconventional paths. "My parents think computer science is just a hobby," one 15-year-old confided, echoing my own experience. "They want me to be a lawyer like my mum." I asked, "What do you want?" She answered without hesitation, "To build things that matter." I told her, "Then build them." I shared resources and encouragement. Find people who believe in your vision, even if they're not your family, and keep the door open for your parents to understand later. That evening, as I prepared for dinner with Jason and Sophia, I reflected on how far I'd come. External validation, industry recognition, financial success, family acknowledgement had finally arrived in abundance. But the most valuable thing I discovered was the ability to validate myself. Jason showed up first, carrying both a homemade chocolate cake that surprisingly looked edible and the emergency bakery cupcakes Sophia had predicted. "I hedged my bets," he admitted with a laugh. "Only set off the smoke alarm once this time." Sophia arrived with wine and updates about their wedding plans. As we gathered around my dining table, the conversation flowed effortlessly from work to weddings to family gossip. Jason reported, "Mom's actually reading books about tech startups. I found tech founders under 30 on her nightstand last week. Better late than never, I said without bitterness. Later, over coffee and dessert in the living room, Sophia asked a question that caught me off guard. Do you ever wish things had been different? That your family recognized your potential from the start? I considered carefully before answering. Of course, sometimes it would have been easier, less painful. But I'm not sure I would have built the same resilience or clarity of purpose. I learnt to believe in myself when no one else did. That's a powerful foundation, Jason added with newfound self-awareness. If Mom and Dad had been fawning over your tech career, I might have grown up even more insufferable than I was. We laughed, the sound drifting over the city lights. The journey wasn't over. Family relationships never are. They evolve continuously. There would be more hard conversations, moments when old patterns threatened to return. But something fundamental had shifted. I no longer needed my family's approval to know my worth. That freedom let me accept their growing appreciation without desperation, forgive past dismissals without forgetting their lessons, build relationships based on who we were becoming, not who we had been. Success isn't measured by recognition, but by impact. By that measure, NextTech had exceeded my wildest dreams, improving patient outcomes and healthcare communication for thousands. I had succeeded in creating a life true to my values and vision, regardless of who approved. Family, the one you're born into and the one you choose, taught me the greatest lesson. Relationships can transform when we bring our full, authentic selves. Not everyone will celebrate your path, but those worth keeping will learn to see you clearly. The next day, looking out over the city from my office window, I felt deep gratitude for the complicated journey. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear, but I was walking it on my own terms, creating success by my own definition. That, more than any acquisition, deal, or family validation, was the real achievement. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about the moments when you had to believe in yourself, even when others didn't. Drop a comment below and share your experience. And if you know someone who needs this message of self-belief, please share this video with them. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your own path, even when it's not the one others expect. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember, true success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself.